As you all know, there's been a tremendous increase in violent crime across our nation over the last couple of years, specifically gun violence. I'm also quite sure that you're aware that Florence is far from being immune to that. There are certainly a multitude of factors and challenges affecting the increase in violent crime. Certainly there's social and economic issues, the constant repeat revolving door for criminal offenders, the low bonds that put offenders back on the street within hours, the overwhelming nationwide deficit in law enforcement officers, and quite frankly, a very understandable hesitation by our citizens to provide information because of their lack of trust in law enforcement. Now, addressing social and economic issues will take entire communities working together. Within the city of Florence, our mayor, city council, city manager work diligently to support sustainable community programs, revitalize neglected neighborhoods, support neighborhood crime watch associations, and to identify community leadership to start affecting that change. But as I focus solely on challenges specific to law enforcement today, I thought I'd talk about some of the ongoing issues that we're doing and addressing here in the city of Florence. Since much of the violent crime and the nonviolent property crimes that we experience in the city of Florence and within the county of Florence overlap with multiple jurisdictions throughout the PD region, Sheriff Joy and I decided to introduce a viable and sustainable criminal intelligence sharing council. That council is open to all of our PD region law enforcement partners. The PD Criminal Intelligence Council, or PDCIC, brings law enforcement representatives from across the PD region together to share information and intelligence regarding crime and criminals who continuously cross jurisdictional lines. This council has been meeting monthly and sharing information for 2 years now. And we're having a lot of success linking criminal intelligence together from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and solving crime. In addition to the PDCIC, Sheriff Joy invited the police department to participate in a violent crime task force last year. The Florence County Violent Crime Task Force is made up of county deputies and city police officers and is designed to focus specifically on operations taking place solely within Florence County and the city of Florence. The task force has been very proactive and effective at removing guns, drugs, and violent offenders from our streets. And I'm sure that Sheriff Joy will talk a little bit more about that and all of our successes over the last 7 months. Now, I know that the Sheriff's Office has experienced this too, but over the last year and a half, 2 of the homicides that were committed in the city of Florence happened at the hands of individuals who are out of jail on bond for a current murder charge. Understand that there is absolutely no question that every person charged with a crime is and should be considered innocent until proven guilty, and they should always be afforded their due process under the law. But it's my opinion, as well as the South Carolina Police Chiefs Association and the South Carolina Sheriff's Association, that a person shouldn't be able to receive a low bond while under a capital murder charge. Now, legislation has been introduced this year, and I believe it's being debated right now. And it will attempt to shore up the criminal bond issues in our state. But individual representatives from both the Police Chiefs Association, Sheriff's Association, the South Carolina Police Officers Association will be lobbying frequently in support of those changes. In addition, the Police Chiefs Association, with as many of our members that are available, are also planning to appear at the State House in the coming months to show our collective support on this most critical issue. As for the nationwide shortage of law enforcement experienced over the last several years, a number of reasons come into play as to why this has occurred. One item on that list is obviously the pandemic, because it put the brakes on recruitment and hiring practices. Then there's the nationwide increase against law enforcement themselves, the traditionally low pay, a growing lack of family support and approval for entering into or even remaining in the profession, and certainly at the top of the list, the loss of citizen trust after so many lawless, brutal attacks by bad cops across our country. Unfortunately, the Florence Police Department has not been immune to the manpower crisis either. But a lot of positive events have taken place for us over the last year that have allowed us to make significant gains. At the beginning of last year, our city manager, Randy Osterman, Randy? I'm trying to get a couple points there. Coordinated an adjustment to the police department budget that allowed for a significant increase in pay for existing officers. That adjustment also included raising the starting salary to a level that has made the Florence Police Department a top competitor in the PD region. In addition to the pay increase, our Human Resources Director, Jennifer Kravietz, Jennifer, more points. Jennifer worked tirelessly on a very broad marketing and recruitment campaign to entice qualified individuals to apply. We also relaxed our tattoo and facial hair policies, and we deployed one of our absolute best resources, the officers of the Florence Police Department, to individually recruit potential applicants for hire. Now, we still have the occasional officers who retire or move on to pursue other endeavors. But today, however, I'm elated to tell you that in just the last year, we have hired 21 qualified police officers. And at this current time, we only have 2 vacant positions that we can fill. Now, that doesn't mean that all of those new hires are patrolling the streets of Florence right now. About half of the 21 have finished their 12 weeks of police academy training, as well as the Florence Police Department's 12 weeks of field training, and are now on their own. The remaining new hires are in different phases of that training. Over the coming months, as the rest are released to full duty, we'll be able to reduce the amount of geographic area that the officers are currently responsible to patrol, and this will make the officers' presence more notable, especially within high-crime neighborhoods. Although the deterrent to crime by having a cop in a marked police vehicle on patrol is immeasurable, we all know that it can be real and an actual deterrent. Lastly, this morning, as we look at the issue of community trust, there's a saying that I'm sure each of you have all heard before, and that is that time heals all wounds. Now, that may generally be a true statement, but when the wound is reopened, repeated by lawless acts made by the very people sworn to protect their communities, that healing time has a tendency to stagnate. So what the Florence Police Department is doing to enhance community relationships and build needed trust, well, there are a number of programs and initiatives that we have taken place, and obviously being an accredited law enforcement agency is certainly at the top of that list. You see, many years before the nationwide demand for police reform, the Florence Police Department had already ventured out on our own to become accredited by the South Carolina Police Accreditation Council and practice those reforms. We do this because we want our officers to be good cops and to follow the highest standards of police practices. Being an accredited law enforcement agency means that we follow 284 standards, high standards, and that we conduct an audit of those practices every single day. In fact, state accreditation assessors were in our agency last week for 2 days of inspection. They were here to conduct a 3-year policy and procedure compliance audit to ensure that we are following every one of those 284 standards that we committed to. This formal review determines whether or not we'll be awarded another 3-year accreditation designation. But as expected, and because of the truly competent and committed staff of the Florence Police Department, we received a very favorable review by the assessors before they departed last Friday. And now we will be hearing before the full Accreditation Council on March the 3rd for the formal agency interview and to receive that reaccreditation award. Understand that being an accredited law enforcement agency isn't a requirement. It's completely voluntary. In fact, the Florence Police Department, the Georgetown County Sheriff's Office, and the Horry County Police Department are the only law enforcement agencies within the PD region that hold that designation. but there is another one on the horizon. The Sheriff's Office has been working diligently to become an accredited agency, and my hat's off to Sheriff Joy for all of that. You know, the other thing is obviously building trust or neighborhood watch associations. We've had a challenge with our neighborhood watch associations because of the pandemic, and the 38 established organizations that we had before the pandemic are now about 20 organizations. Neighborhood and business associations are extremely important to a department that practices community policing, mostly because it gives residents the opportunity to get to know the officers in their community and thereby building the much needed trust that they deserve. So I'm going to tell you in this place today, whether you live in the city or county, I would encourage you to join a neighborhood watch association. It's simply a win-win situation for the citizen and the police. The Florence Police Department also has a plethora of other community programs and initiatives that we provide to adults and children throughout the year to show our commitment to the city. But I'm going to tell you that the absolute best way to build trust between law enforcement and the citizens we serve is to ensure that our officers are always decent, kind, professional, and respectful to everyone that they meet. We accomplish this by providing them with the tools they need to do their job, body cameras to critique their responses, constant and continuous training, leadership, and accountability. With over 47,000 calls for police service last year, we had 9 complaints on police officers, and only one of those complaints was substantiated. In closing, and to everyone in this room today, I want you to know this. Our cops see the very worst in humanity when violent crime occurs. Horrendous acts of violence that no human being should ever have to witness. Yet they come back shift after shift after shift. And why? Because in my opinion, the city of Florence has some of the best, brightest, dedicated, brave, and most heroic people working for the police department that this state has to offer. And quite frankly, we won't have it any other way. Thank you for having me here today.
We're going to ask if you have any questions, please stand. We have time.